Hi, everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, please start. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. This is indeed a privilege to again start a session from ASSOCHAM virtual roundtable discussion on one of the topic for current scenario. India's cyber attack is rising multifold in the current environment. Are we really secure? It's my honor to welcome Shri Narendra, Joint Secretary, National Secretary, Cyberattack. We have keynote speakers from Mr. Jason Atwell, Senior Manager, Government Mandiant Threat Intelligence FireEye, Mr. Luke McNamara, Principal Analyst, GSI FireEye, Shri Yihao Lim, Principal Intelligence Enablement Consultant, Asia Pacific FireEye, for their keynote address. It is indeed a privilege to have a special address from Neeta Verma, DG National Informatics Center, followed by a panel discussion with distinguished panelists from CERT-IN, Shri S.S. Sarma, Director CERT-IN, Mr. Luke, Principal Analyst FireEye, Tathakta Datta, Director NCIIPC, Dr. Muktesh Chandar, warm welcome, Special Commissioner of Police, Delhi Police, Professor Triveni Singh, SP Cyber Police, and we will also have Shri Dhaval Pandeji with us, Office of Advisor, Cyber to Secretariat, DRDO, Ministry of Defense, Government of India. A very, very warm welcome to all of you for another, warm session on cybersecurity. I would like to take 2 to 3 minutes to set the context for today, while we are seeing similar topics for this era of 2020, and there cannot be any better week, better month to close the year seeing on a positive note post-pandemic, which we all are going through. Let me give you some context in generic, the way we are seeing cybersecurity as a central challenge for digital age. We all have gone through it. One of the recent report, even from the also the Chief Security Advisor for Microsoft India and the co-chairman for ASSOCHAM Security Council. While we have seen the data signals, which is published in that report, the 3 top-level areas which came to the sharpest focus is cybercrime, nation-state threats, and remote workforce. And I'm sure each one of us in our own respective jobs, at personal life, professionally, have encountered one or the other instances while working from home, working remote, or hybrid, which is not only temporary, but for future, it is going to change the entire nation. At the same time, the cyber criminals took, its stance of nation-state threats, getting into more of email phishing, ROI-driven attacks on not only by ransomware, the cyber criminals have gone sophisticated, being on targeted attacks. So every day, organizations take precious time and resources away from their core business. And that's one of the concerns we would like to, hear from the panel and our distinguished guest. Cybersecurity is a central challenge for our multiple security threat intelligence parameters we all have seen. Living in India, which is close to 7.5 to 8 lakh villages, and rural connectivity is yet to go to each and every location. We can think that how important and imperative it will be in future to build a secure nation. We are just 10 to 30% within the urban areas, and still utilizing the new technologies like cloud, embracing the journey of artificial intelligence, thanks to our think tank AI Niti Aayog, working with Ministry of IT, where we see how the new policies and processes comes up. To conclude, data is going to be the center or core of everything. Data to be utilized for best of the for citizens. Data is to be utilized for best of creating policies and process. And that is why it becomes utmost important that data has to be secured and protected wherever it is. It does not matter where it lives with the systems, outside the system, in hybrid mode, across cloud, inter-border, but it has to be safe, secure, protected. And with that, I'll open up, and it is my privilege to invite Shri Narendra, Joint Secretary, National Secretariat. Sir, over to you to hear from our guest of honor.
Sir, before you join, I just all announcement. Secretary 11:50. The him take first we want to the session. Thank you. To you, Neeta.
Yeah, thank you for accommodating me, Mr. Varun. I'm sorry, but suddenly something has come and I have to go for a meeting in the Ministry of Home. Yeah. So, thanks for inviting me for this session here. I think at the top of the mind, I think what I'd like to do is, share with you some of the concerns that we have from the National Security Council Secretariat, sort of. And, that is, and those are the areas, where we look for, the industry, academia, and other departments working in. I appreciate what Mr. Deepak Talwar had told, and these are things that for the last couple of months we've been discussing in various forums, work from home, and the the large-scale phishing attacks that are happening now, especially with the uncertainty and that is there around, and people falling for those phishing attacks and wishing attacks also. And so here I would actually like to say, because when we talk of here, we look at very lot in terms of critical infrastructure, and how do you protect the underlying critical infrastructure is one of the things that we're looking at. And with respect, especially what I've seen the UK report and the EU report on protecting of infrastructure, that there are two areas. One is having the trusted source. I mean, recently there was an announcement regarding procuring equipment only from trusted sources. That's a very important part. But it also comes out that, and trusted sources, when you talk of trusted sources, there are two elements for it, two dimensions. One is a trusted source in terms of malicious intent, in terms of trying to eliminate sources which have malicious intent, and then deliberately poisoning the equipment or equipment that comes to you. The other, in terms of trusted sources, the other dimension is, of course, just because you get equipment that is not from a malicious source does not mean that the equipment is safe, secure. Because in lots of attacks that we see across the world, especially what's happened in the US also, the equipment that is there, the software that is there, they're all from trusted sources in terms of malicious intent. But still, there's been a compromise of security that's happened. So it is also important to have a secure design in terms of the security architecture. So those are the two dimensions. And in India, for the critical infrastructure, there have been conditions which says that whatever you put into the equipment, into the networks, should be tested and security tested and certified before it goes into the network. That's one dimension that was addressed earlier. The current, the other dimension regarding procuring from sources, eliminating malicious intent, is something that we've recently tried to address. So this is one part of that, and we have to put in place a mechanism for the whatever decisions have been taken to see that this thing happens, and we are on the job. Then the other dimension that we have found is the lack of skill sets, because this I've actually talked in other forum also. CERT-IN, for example, gives a lot of advisories about measures to take to address the vulnerabilities that are there, and known vulnerabilities that suddenly come up and attacks that have come up. But still, after a few months, 5 or 6 months down the line, you find that that vulnerability has been used for launching an attack, and lots of organizations are affected. So what is it that is causing that? Though you have advisories being issued by CERT-IN, why is it that organizations are not able to take or have not taken action to secure their networks or secure the infrastructure? And this is where we find that there's a lot of there's a deficiency in the skill sets that the people who are receiving the advisories are not able to properly appreciate what the advisory implies, how to take action on the advisory, some of the things, some of the places we have found. And I think building skill sets and the institutional mechanisms on security within organizations is another challenge that is there. CISOs are a very important component of the whole exercise. And I think the competency framework for different roles, or roles of the CISOs and roles within the organization, and building defined training programs for that, both in terms of the type of academic training that goes in, plus the work experience that the people should have to see that these advisories properly implemented. So that is another area that I think requires to be addressed very seriously, because we could do a lot of talk, and we've been doing a lot of talk in all of these forums that we have. But on ground, seeing that results come I think some action is required to be taking place now. And I think developing a competency framework and then implementing the competency framework across all the organizations is another very important part, where the industry and the academia, where the government have a big role to play to work together on that. So then the other thing that we find is I think we have been talking about this, that the National Cybersecurity Strategy is also in the annual. It's in a very advanced stage. We have had widespread industry consultation on that, plus consultation with the other organizations within the government and outside the government. And based on the inputs, a holistic document has been prepared. And the strategy is an action plan. It also has an action plan with a 5-year time frame and with a wish list, which actually what we want to be after 5 years, and what is the security posture that the country should have is something that's been worked out in that. And this document is in a very advanced stage of being examined within the government and for approval process. This covers the aspects that I've talked about and much more than that. It also talks in terms of the fragmented nature of the cybersecurity architecture that we have, because it's evolved over a period of time, and there are many organizations within the government and outside the government that have been formed over a period of time. It's required that they don't work in silos, and there's a lot of coordination and cooperation within them. So the consolidation of the organizations is one thing that is visualized in that. And also the different aspects of cybersecurity, including capacity building, institutional building, is also part of that, plus maybe some legislative and regulatory measures that are required for ensuring cyberspace. So with these words, the times are exciting because there's a lot of work that's to be done, and there's an opportunity for all of us to contribute. That's the exciting part of it. And the times are also a lot of concern because the number of cyber attacks that are taking place, and sometimes we feel overwhelmed that there are certain things that we have not done, and how do we get things get done? So that is also there. So with these words, I thank the organization again for giving me an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Narendra. This is your kind words and having that inputs. I only take 30 seconds before you leave on your busy schedule. Learning these sessions from you ongoing for last 1 year. We are seeing National Cybersecurity Strategy, which is about to come. We will have a lot where we say, security is everyone's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. We all as a citizens, as a corporate, public-private partnerships, today, our team, Microsoft, all being working to get going, to see the academia and research and India as services are also moving towards a lot of manufacturing. So we will contribute our part. Thank you for your participation, Naji, for today from your busy schedule. We'll continue this session. Thank you, sir. So you're on mute. Thank you. Okay, without taking much more time, it's a great time to see our keynote address by Mr. Jason Atwell. Welcome, Jason, to the forum. Jason is Senior Manager, Government Intelligence, FireEye. Over to you, Jason, for your keynote address.
Thank you. And thanks and good morning to everyone, and thanks for having us. And especially good morning, early morning here from Washington, D.C. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the sort of general geopolitical dynamics that are at play anytime a U.S. administration changes over, and how that specifically might, manifest itself in the cyber threat environment. I live and work here in D.C. I've been a consultant and a contractor and a government employee at a number of different agencies here. So over the years, I've gotten to see this up close a couple times. And I'm not trying to give any stock picks or anything here this morning, but hopefully just to give a little bit of insight into, what some of the stuff we might see, in current events over the next few months. So what I'm going to talk about real quick is kind of the U.S. stance right now and how that might play out as the administration changes over, and then where we might see some changes or adjustments in threat actor behavior based on that. And then just very briefly, I'll kind of touch upon the nexus to India before I hand it off to the next presenter. So we've all heard the talk about great power competition and things like that. And, the Biden administration has already made it pretty clear that they've got a renewed interest in pursuing those technological advantages that are necessary to maintain the upper hand in a great power environment. The reason why we know so much about what the Biden administration may or may not do when they come in is that the Biden administration is better equipped to run the U.S. government bureaucracy, and that's from a purely objective standpoint, because a lot of the folks that have already been named to high-level positions in the administration, they're folks that were already in government under the Obama administration. As we all know, Biden was the vice president. And a lot of the folks that he's bringing with him are people that were formerly on his staff, either as the vice president, as a senator, or held key positions under Obama on his recommendation. So especially when you look at agencies like the State Department, they are going to be run by people who have a long track record of not only working in those agencies in the past, but having a direct line to the president in terms of policy recommendations, et cetera. So, I'd like to specifically highlight someone like Antony Blinken, who's going to be the Secretary of State. He's previously was the Deputy Secretary of State. He knows how to run that department, and you'll probably see cyber as a component of diplomacy in a way that it hasn't been for the last few years. How we might see that manifest in adjustments from threat actors? Well, we all know that tensions with China have been much higher lately than they had been previously. So, China is definitely going to continue their activities apace. They've got a strong interest in catching up to us technologically. And so that means, not just targeting of U.S. infrastructure, but infrastructure across Asia Pacific, especially where, they have their immediate economic and political goals. Additionally, as I mentioned, the Biden administration already kind of has a track record because it's in many ways a continuation of the Obama administration. And the Russians remember when Obama was in office, there was tensions over Ukraine, tensions over Georgia, involvement in Syria, all of the different things that we know were going on back then. Russia kind of remembers how the red lines, so to speak, were drawn by the administration. And so, especially with the stuff that we've seen recently in the news, Russia is going to be looking to figure out, is the Biden administration going to take the same tack that the Obama administration did? Is there room for them to kind of push the boundaries in the way they have in the past? They're going to test the new administration in terms of their cyber capabilities. We're probably already seeing the beginning of that. In sort of the same token, North Korea has enjoyed a level of engagement with the current administration that they've never really had with a U.S. administration before. So, anybody who studies North Korea knows that they're always looking for ways to make sure that they kind of stay on the agenda when it comes to bilateral and multilateral engagement. So, as North Korea's cyber capabilities have increased, I wouldn't be surprised if, in addition to things like missile tests or weapon tests, we don't see them, launching cyber attacks as a way to make sure that they get the attention they feel they deserve and that they're part of the conversation. And then finally, just like with Russia, the new administration has a track record in dealing with Iran. The Iran nuclear deal, things like that, they were all negotiated under the Obama administration. So a lot of the key diplomats and key foreign policy experts that were involved in those discussions, they're going to be back in DC now. And so the Iranians, they did not have such a good relationship with the Trump administration. And so they're going to be trying to figure out, what the new rules of engagement are with, the Biden administration. How can they pursue their goals? How can they make sure that they, get back to being treated as, partners for potential negotiation, et cetera. And then also some of the military confrontation in Iraq, especially Iran, is going to be, the word revenge has been thrown around, but they're going to be looking for ways to make sure that the United States is taking them seriously and that they get what they want out of international relations. India plays an important role in a lot of the things I just talked about because of being a large economic power in the Indo-Pacific region. As most people know, Pacific Command, formerly known as Pacific Command, is now Indo-Pacific Command, and that gives you some idea of the shift in United States priorities in terms of multilateral engagement, looking at the region from a more holistic angle. Cyber cooperation is a huge part of that. As has already been mentioned, supply chains are a big deal. Trade deals and how those affect technology and technology transfer and the protection of intellectual property. Those are very important items right now. And the new administration, given that they're better prepared to run the bureaucracy, they're going to be really interested in flexing their muscle when it comes to adjusting trade deals, either existing or new, and pursuing multilateral engagement rather than bilateral engagement based on individual personalities, et cetera. So the Biden administration in some ways is a return to the Obama administration. They've got set priorities on some of this stuff, and I think we'll see that play out over the next weeks and months. So that's all I have, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to Luke.
Thanks, Jason. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, Jason, for the opportunity to share your point of view. Let me invite Mr. Luke McNamara. Luke, over to you.
Awesome, and hopefully you can see my slides okay. I think I have the wrong screen displaying here. Is that working?
Should be good. Themes and concerns. We can see if that's a slide. Yes.
Awesome. Well, good morning as well from the East Coast of the United States. I wanted to go over this morning a couple different areas, as the slide says, themes and concerns, drawn from conversations with customers, folks here talking with and engaging with customers regularly, as well as some of our own internal threat analysts, as we think through what are some of the themes that we've seen this year. What are some things that organizations are focused on addressing, challenges ahead, and what might be some ways to think about that? First and foremost, one can't talk about the sort of lead themes of threat activities here without touching on ransomware. Ransomware, along with data theft and leakage, certainly not something new in terms of a tactic, but really one that we've seen combined in earnest this year from multiple threat groups. Accompanied with the entrance into the ransomware space by many different cybercrime groups, some of which who before this year were not very active in the ransomware game. More and more threat actors are gravitating to this as a place to make money. You've seen the increase in the amount of ransom price demanded. And in part, what threat actors have really done this year, what's really unique in comparison to previous years, is marrying the usage of ransomware and the extortion that's brought about by encrypting systems and data with data theft from a victim environment and leaking that out publicly through different websites that these organizations control. Typically what we're seeing is affiliate models where a ransomware developer or operator will work with other groups that are involved in kind of initial access that gain a foothold to that network, and then work with that ransomware developer operator or provide or sell them access to that to deploy the ransom. And I think one of the things that this has been a wake-up call for many organizations is, unlike many other different types of threats, the theft of data in and of itself, cyber espionage, other types of financially motivated crime, a disruptive event like ransomware is something that is very difficult to hide, and it becomes very public very fast. That has only, I think, increased with the fact that you're seeing the name and shame sites that point out and highlight the organizations and companies and government entities that have been compromised in an effort to make them pay more. I have here a chart that shows the sort of geographic distribution that we've seen this year with respect to some of the ransomware families involved in the data theft and leakage. And as you can see, it really is global. Right now, we have seen kind of a focus on North America and Europe, where a lot of these operations have kind of began. But I think over time, similar to other threats that we've seen historically, threat activity will certainly migrate and move elsewhere as newer threat actors into the space, sometimes local threat actors that want to emulate these tactics, or even some of the currently active threat groups that seek new different regions to monetize. So I think that's something that certainly shows no signs of stopping. And I think right now, across the industry, there's a large discussion around what's to be done to address this. Working with governments internationally, working with law enforcement. There's certainly more I think that we can do there, but I think the word of caution on that is even in the past where we've seen law enforcement response against ransomware operations and other types of cybercrime operations, that's had somewhat limited success or short-term success. So I think it's going to take a variety of different means to keep disrupting these operations. But in the near term, expect to see these continue. One of the big things I think that we will see, pivoting off of what Jason was talking about earlier, is the sort of nature and evolution of Chinese cyber espionage going into this next year. As a short kind of recap in history with what we've seen historically, a lot of different groups and a lot of activity in terms of tempo prior to 2016. So everything in the kind of pre-2015 phase, a lot more chaotic and noisy in terms of the operations, and a big focus on economic espionage through IP theft. What we've seen sort of since then, the 2016 period up until now, has been a reformulation of groups that has been discussed kind of widely in the open source around how some of the missions utilizing offensive cyber capabilities in China have shifted organizationally. We've seen that play out tactically. We've seen new groups emerge that have carried out operations and targeting. We've seen pieces of older groups start to reemerge. And that's been one of the interesting things to track over the last several years, seeing more and more of these groups that had been dormant for a while come back, and groups that are repurposing older tools, older code bases, and coming back in some cases with different targeting sets, but coming back nonetheless. What I think has been somewhat interesting and difficult to kind of assess has been the fact that some of the tactics having changed with a greater focus on moving up the information supply chain, right? A focus on targeting telecoms, focus on going after managed security providers, has meant that some of these operations, while there may be fewer organizations compromised initially, the data and access gained from those organizations due to the nature of who they are, the space that they operate in, the data they have access to, in some cases may be much larger. So I think we're still not at the point where we can point and say that the level of volume, the amount of data that is being siphoned off by Chinese espionage operations approaches what we saw pre-2015. But I think that with more and more of these groups coming back, this I think bears one of the most important questions that we have to kind of address from an analytical standpoint going into next year. What really is the nature of these ongoing operations, and how do we better put it in place sort of metrics to compare it to what we saw in that earlier period. Of course, I mentioned supply chain security, and I think following from the SolarWinds breach and campaign that we're seeing, across the industry, organizations respond to, I think there will be a renewed discussion around that going into next year. And I think the concern from this obviously is in a situation like SolarWinds, or even thinking back to supply chain compromises that have led to disruptive attacks, such as MEDOC in Ukraine and the NotPetya attack, how whether the focus is espionage, the focus is disruptive or destructive attacks, the concerns around leveraging, trusted third-party vendors, and ones that may have initially vetted with a high degree of confidence that the processes and procedures and software that you are utilizing is trusted and secure. The fact that that's not a static thing, that can change over time. And so I think, again, the entire space coming to grips with how we think about this going forward in the future, and that security increasingly beyond just your own network, your own perimeter, your own internal systems, has to also rely upon the security of trusted vendors and other parties. One way that I think we'll also see the discussion around threat intelligence evolve has been the increasing focus around validation. The ability to move beyond, singular one-time audits, but to have a sort of continuous process for testing your defenses, testing your controls against a range of actors' playbooks. I think one of the many different benefits that these sorts of technologies enable is that it also enables a wider set of actor playbooks to be tested continuously against your controls, your networks, your environment. And why that is important is, I think when you look at examples of different sponsors of threat activity, I use North Korea as an example, where we've seen them, for example, this year, quickly pivot and start targeting COVID vaccine research. While it's important to be focused on the threat actors that are most historically interested in your sector, in your region, we know from reality, we know from operations we're constantly tracking, the threat actors can pivot on a dime and change very quickly the types of organizations they're going after, the data they're going after. And so I think being able to scale up the ability to test defenses through validation is an important new way in consuming threat intelligence. Expansion and evolution of information operations. This is something, again, this year where we've seen newer groups emerge, more and more state actors and non-state actors getting into this space, and in some cases leveraging capabilities in other parts of cyber threat activity, the ability to conduct intrusions, cyber espionage toolkits, to be able to penetrate entities such as media, news websites, and spread fabricated content through those channels in an effort to get it picked up and distributed further. I think we'll continue to see evolution in this space. More and more threat actors entering this is something that, again, as we've seen this year, I don't expect that to stop. And I think expect to see more inventive ways at spreading messaging as these different networks of accounts, get spun up and trial out different ways to spread their message and try to get those picked up in different channels. The big question every year is also, what sort of new threat actors will we see? We talk a lot, obviously, about Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Vietnam has been a country in APT 32, or the APT groups that come from there, where we've seen more activity in recent years. But certainly we know that there's other groups out there developing capabilities, utilizing those capabilities. In some cases, it's threat actors that are building up organically. In some cases, leveraging maybe the cybercrime community in their country or region, or in some cases, buying off-the-shelf tools. But that's always an important question, I think, to answer going into every year is what new threat actors will we see emerge from some of the countries that are looking at ways to expand and grow that capability. And then lastly, I'll just close with, as we think about how COVID-19 has impacted and shifted, the workforce and the security landscape with more organizations that have remote workforces, that have people working from home, even as we enter the distribution phase of vaccines, and hopefully in 2021 we see an end to COVID, we might not see a complete end to remote workforces. And even organizations that bring a lot of people back into office may still have pretty significant remote workforces. Certainly in the time this year, a lot of organizations have had to get better about securing these assets that are now outside the network of the office. But I think one area in particular where we might see sort of an increased focus from a security standpoint has been around insider threats. So again, if we still have folks working from home, and that continues to be another sort of threat vector that organizations have to think about, whether it's folks that are are employed, that cease and terminate from an organization, from a company, and then now they have assets that are remotely. What's the process by regaining those assets? What information are people accessing on their home networks? What's the potential for that to be an inadvertent kind of increase in risk for the organization? All these sorts of questions, I think, bear further examination by a lot of organizations that are still going to have a remote workforce. So again, while you've had organizations that have put a lot of effort into securing things like telecommunications, the teleconferencing software and applications that we use, VPNs, et cetera, insider threat, it might be another area where we see an increased focus going forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Yihao for the next piece.
Thank you, Luke. Before we invite Yihao, I just want to summarize. It's really impressive to see the themes and concerns for people on the call. The way we are seeing continuous assessment, that that's how we as an organization also talk, to have a continuous risk assessment. It cannot be static or a quarterly or a yearly audit. And that is why it's very important, seeing as a chief advisor, that we are not talking security, only security. It has to be security, compliance, and identity. That's how we have seen in the Solari and SolarWinds, and situations where the identity and other compromise creates a impact. Very, very, very informative, insightful, updates, and seeing the insider threat while we are seeing remote work from home. It's not just connecting your systems, laptops. There is no, barrier between personal and professional systems, your desktop, laptops, your mobile phones. It has got merged. Earlier it was blurred with cloud, but now it has merged together, where my system might be used by entire family and nothing wrong, as long as it is well maintained with security. Like to hear now from another speaker. I would like to invite Yihao Lim, Principal Intelligence Enablement Consultant, Asia Pacific FireEye. Over to you, Yihao, to hear your keynote.
Hi guys, thank you for inviting me. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. Right, so thank you for summarizing the previous sessions. So back, what Luke and Jason mentioned just now was more on the macro situation of general trends. And in my segment itself, I will give a deeper dive into specific incidents I see in India that could be of concern to you. Right, so very quickly, I'm going to go into my slides. I'm going to break down this into two slides of first half and second half cyber threats that we see in India itself. This is not a comprehensive list. There is actually tens of thousands of incidents that we have observed, but I'm only filtering out the ones that make that are more of concern, and I'm going to highlight over here on the slides. As you can see from here, from January to June in the first half of this year, we have multiple incidents happening across the domains of cyber espionage, financial crime, and even hacktivists itself. And you know that COVID happened somewhere between February and March this year, and that actually created another spike of activities because a lot of phishing emails and lure themes and malicious documents were using COVID theme or COVID-related titles to fool users. Over here, you can see one of the examples of a Russian-speaking actor selling access to PC with state documents of an Indian city. I'm just trying to highlight that threat actors attacking India itself is not just limited to Chinese or Pakistan-related actors, but Russians are also seen to be observing Indian targets as well. Next, you can see from here that researchers itself are also publishing claims that COVID mobile applications are not secure, and that could lead to a certain leak of data. And last but not least, the Indian National Identity Aadhaar data is also being leaked in online marketplace around May this year. Quickly pivoting to the second half of the year, you can see, again, similar types of activities and attacks in the nature of espionage, financial crime, and also hacktivism. We can see continued COVID activity targeting multiple Indian organizations somewhere in July. And we continue to see attention given to the Aadhaar national identity systems as well. And in September itself, we also observed APT-36 campaigns against multiple Indian military or government organizations. So if you are not aware of APT-36, it's basically a cyber espionage actor that is active since 2013 itself. And we observe them to be collecting intelligence and missions in support of Pakistani interests in the military and diplomatic interest. Last but not least, we also see another government employee database being breached, and there are also data being offered from there. Right, so moving forward and looking ahead, what we think would be interesting and of concern in the coming year, in addition to what Luke said, actually it's a little bit similar to what Luke said, I think would be the persistent and growth of ransomware usage. As what Luke mentioned earlier, there is an affiliate model now ongoing where the original author will create a malware and make it easy to disseminate and easy for different people to use the malware to make money, especially now given that lots of jobs are lost. Some people might be turning into illegal means to make some money for themselves. And I think that this could be another thing that would be an ongoing basis. And organizations have to understand and learn how to protect themselves against similar kinds of attacks. And secondly, of course, we think cyber espionage will continue to be an ongoing driver of a state versus state kind of activity. And just because the COVID situation happened, and there are a lot of uncertainty between countries on maybe the vaccination program or intellectual property on how you can roll out strategic control measures. These are stuff that will be interesting to neighboring countries as well. So we will expect to see more of these kinds of espionage or reconnaissance activities between countries and neighbors. And in this year itself, we continue to see multiple cases of espionage going on. In the US itself, we have seen at least 4 different indictments that are done against espionage actors. You can see from here that the figures are showing actors from Russia, from Iran, and from China itself. And this continues to undermine trust between countries. And of course, not forgetting North Korea itself, that is also a notorious actor. In the view of the COVID situation right now, we also see a lot of espionage activity that are building onto the COVID situation. And because it's a hot topic now, a lot of activity is ongoing as we see. From January itself, we have seen multiple actors in the table. You can see on the right side, they are targeting victims across the world. As you can see from here in Asia, Southeast Asia itself, Vietnam APT-32 is very active. And we have also seen them target China's Ministry of Emergency Management, the Wuhan government itself during the very early stages of the virus outbreak. And this is a good example of how nations are using their cyber capability as a new frontier to extract information that is sensitive and information that is not widely reported in the news to protect their own interests. And moving on to the second half of the year, we also see multiple campaigns against multiple industries. Some of them are against non-government industries such as shipping or telecommunications sector, and some of them are against aerospace and defense providers. So what we think is this COVID situation is not changing the way things are done. The targets that are high value in the past is still high value right now, just that the way that they go about it is using the COVID lures and themes to get to the targets that they want to get to. So the COVID situation actually facilitated and made it even more easy for them to infiltrate or trick people to click on emails or open attachments, because it's just a pressing topic in everybody's minds right now. Okay, and in addition to this, we are also noticing critical infrastructure becoming a serious topic of concern. You can see from the screenshot over here earlier in October this year, the Triton Malware Research Institute was indicted by the US Department of Treasury. And having said that, the Triton incident was also something that FireEye Mandiant had very deep knowledge about, and we wrote a very in-depth report on the TTPs and how it operated, and even linked it to the institute itself. Right. Something interesting to note would be, the minute that we posted about the institute and a specific the way that they were operating, they actually changed something on their website to draw attention away from themselves towards this specific malware. So if you need information on this specifically, please reach out to me. I can share more of that with you. And we think that this is a serious concern, because this malware itself was designed to target a specific ICS controller to initiate immediate shutdown procedure in the event of an emergency. So it's like a safety feature that could be disabled. So imagine in the event that this safety feature is disabled, controllers could be used to run machines until it's overheating and maybe cause physical damage itself, and hence even leading to physical loss of lives. And this is because of the increasing network of connected devices we are seeing in factories now across the world itself. And in addition to this, you can see from here, the smart factories are now emerging as well. Some of the medical devices that hospitals use right now are also considered smart, and it can be remotely accessed. Even surgeries can be done remotely right now. There are some proof of concepts that were done previously in the previous months. And of course, IoT devices and collaborative robots are opening up this space, and the whole attack surface is now increasing exponentially, right? And what I'm saying now is not just espionage actors, but even financially motivated actors can be in play here, where they can come in and at least just release ransomware across the environment and disable everything, and then ask for extortion, right? This is a possibility as well. So in May 2015, we have already seen researchers from University of Washington demonstrating that they are able to manipulate the device's physical movements remotely. So they're able to make the robot do specific movements that they want them to do remotely, and this could be a problem in the event that this is really something that is in a real operation itself, right? Potentially causing physical damages or loss of lives. Next, I think something that is interesting would be deepfake phenomena. So deepfake is actually a technology that is widely known right now, that is practically machine learning and artificial intelligence related. And they are using specific algorithms to create fake images or even fake audio or fake video that can look like the real person itself. And you can see from the picture on the right that these are images that are generated by deepfake technology. And there are some ways to go about telling that these images are not authentic. But when it comes to video and audio, it's a little bit more difficult to differentiate, right? So as we think that this technology becomes cheaper and more widely accessible to users, we think that actors will increase the uptake and usage of these kind of technologies inside the information operations. And we know that this will be likely used to target elections itself, right? So earlier this year, we have seen actors actually using deepfake to create social media accounts to spread information and misinformation campaigns during elections itself. And it can be used to manipulate it to issue threats or spread hate within societies and causing some social problems. And nearer to home in India, we also have seen politicians using deepfake technology in their election campaigns. Well, you can argue that this is for a good cause, because this politician is just using deepfake to change the language of his conversation to reach out to a wider audience. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's a potential threat that somebody with a malicious intent could be using this to impersonate famous people of influence to spread messages of hate. And that might lead to problems in India itself, because we all know that in India in 2018 itself, there were rumors that were circulating on WhatsApp, and that itself led to 30 deaths in India itself. So having this kind of influence that is ongoing in the society itself could be a problem. Lastly, I just want to share some of the perspectives that we have seen across clients that I've dealt with in Asia Pacific itself. And it's a little bit similar to what you can see from the screen here, which is, there's a lack of emergency services to deal with the sudden surge of events in a very short amount of time. Likewise, in the cyber domain, we also see a similar phenomena happening whenever there's, for example, an incident happening, like a ransomware outbreak, because of these reasons. Essentially, we often see there's a lack of strategic insights to decide on the current plans and the strategic implementation controls that are supposed to be put in industries. Sometimes during remediation or incident response, there were hasty attempts to just kick the actor out without a full understanding of where these actors are hiding, and that actually lead to a problem where we are not effectively uncovering the dwelling threats. So dwelling means that this backdoor could have a similar name to original file, and because you did not examine it properly, that actually allowed the actor to come back into your system like a backdoor and continue to exfiltrate files even after you have finished the incident response itself. And that's a bigger problem to deal with because actors are always around your environment and almost like a virus that never goes away. Sometimes we also see security operations center analysts overwhelmed with too much alert that they cannot deal with the real problems. And also, last but not least, something with patch prioritization that I face with a lot of my customers when I talk to them. They struggle to prioritize which patches to deal with in their environment because everything is critical nowadays. And I think the underlying pillar that needs to be emphasized over here is, you need to have the right kind of intelligence to understand which of the patches, for example, are relevant to your industry or your environment and which ones should be prioritized versus whatever's out there on the news right now, which is spreading a lot of fear. And that is not helpful because it's just making everybody confused and it's not helping the defenders to fight against evil better. Right. And with this, I will end my presentation. I just want to take a pause and see if there's any questions from the floor.
Thank you, Yao. We may have some questions, but with due respect of time, okay, we will have a follow-up panel. It's great to hear. I would definitely like to summarize few of the sessions which we had since morning and what you spoke right now, not just from the country perspective, but how the first half of 2020 and the second half of 2020 has gone into. I'll take 2 minutes to explain that while I can see, Dr. Neeta Verma. Welcome, Dr. Neeta Verma. It's a pleasure first time to see you virtually being connected, and we have been in multiple panels. And we can resonate. This is the new way, so-called new normal together. Ma'am, just to share, while we were having in the morning, Shri Narendra ji talked about how we are building the secure country, how we are bringing up national cybersecurity strategy. But one thing which was highlighted and it hooked in my mind, not just as a chief advisor from Microsoft, but even as from the industry partner and public-private partnership, is you need to think where you can practically implement it. Theoretically, we do a lot of events, we get into inputs. Now we want to have that partnership where we are bringing that threat intelligence. Yao shared right now that the first half, how we are seeing like Aadhaar cards in India, geopolitical instances. And by the way, I would like to highlight one more point, cyber attribution. We may not know from where the threat has come from. We may say this is the country where we started in seeing the threat, but when we go back, it has been passed because it is so dynamic on the IP or IOCs and other things. And the last part, which I would like to see on deepfakes, where fortunately we have a tool or software by which we can swap and find out which are deepfakes. We are working on it. I'm sure FireEye and every organization is working on it. But most important is let's have responsible use of technologies like AI and machine learning. That also will be the next future. I was privileged in earlier years working with Neeta ma'am and being on the panels where she mentioned create AI for villages. Ma'am, I'm borrowing that point. I still in my mind because that's how I'll hand over to you. Utilize AI, Deepak, to find out something which can happen for the villages, how healthcare can go remotely to them through the use of AI, and at the same time, securing the nation while we are coming up with a privilege of PDP bill and PD, National Cybersecurity Strategy 2020. These visions will make it strong. With that, it's an honor to invite our guest honor, Dr. Neeta Verma. Ma'am, over to you for your speech.
Thank you, Deepak. Good afternoon, everyone. This has been a real pleasure talking to you on topic which is so pertinent in this era of digital transformation. The Digital India program, launched by our Honorable Prime Minister in an historic event in 2015, has truly accelerated the pace of digital transformation, both in services as well as in infrastructure. We have witnessed a broadband revolution in our country with 700 million broadband users in India today. Every organization, public, private, multinationals, is trying to connect with citizens online, be it sharing of information, be it sharing of content, or offering their services online. Almost every sector today is influenced by this wave of digitalization, be it health, education, agriculture, commerce, transport, entertainment, marketing, trade, and finance. And it is not only in government, I have been seeing government, industry, as well as our startup community, all are heavily invested into finding out more and more innovative solutions through digital technologies to empower these people to raise our economy to $1 trillion economy and so on and so forth. Advent of cloud computing has further accelerated this pace of digitalization, particularly because today you have provision of infra on demand. So if you have a concept, you have an idea, making it live has become far more simpler than the olden times when you have to procure hardware and set up in data centers and so on and so forth. You could scale on demand. You do not have to sit down and really do some kind of anticipations and these things that how many users I'm likely to have. So you can literally scale on demand, and most importantly, pay as use. As a result, what has happened, it has become a very attractive proposition. The barrier to launch your idea or launch your app has really lowered down in terms of cost and time and effort. And that is the reason you see with this 500 plus million mobile smartphone users in the country, we have truly witnessed the tsunami of mobile apps. I mean, you just go any area you touch and you discuss, I wish I could have, and somebody in your friend circle or your children will tell you, oh, there is an app, why don't you try that? So that's a kind of ecosystem of apps we really have, which address to our day-to-day problems. Today, not only we can communicate and share information with anybody, any friends or family in the globe, across the globe. We've seen how India has been doing education, how children are studying during these times of COVID. Health is really picking up. A lot of apps to proactive health as well as consultations. Entertainment has always been a favorite of digital industry, and you have seen the kind of content coming on all these OTT platforms, and digital payments where India has been really leading. So all this put together, if you see, has really made life much simpler and very easy. Everything is available, as the Prime Minister says. On your mobile, you have an access to the word, you have an access to the government, almost everything you could handle through that so small factor but super powerful mobile phone. While it has made our life easy and simple, it has also made us vulnerable to wide variety of cyber attacks. And we all know that we keep hearing these kind of unpleasant, sometimes painful incidences which some people have to go across in terms of losing money and many other social aspects. So while cloud computing and all these apps have given a lot of power to meaningful service providers, it has, or the people who are writing apps and startups who are launching these innovative ideas, it has also empowered hackers with a great power, with the availability of compute, almost of the level of GPUs and everything on demand. It has really empowered them, and also the kind of apps or like say tools available to hack at the same time. So today with that superpower, what they are able to do, they are able to profile a vast network at a speed. The time to attack or time to plan and launch the attack has really reduced dramatically. And at the same time to spread the attack, earlier if there is a 0-day attack has come, you have some time where the company will release the patch and then you will apply the patch. Only thing you need to see that how do you automate applying this patch to entire infrastructure, and then you are kind of safe. But today you don't have that kind of a time, because if they have launched and successful on, let's say, one version of any of the operating system or any stack, they can quickly do the profiling and they can quickly spread across, because they don't have that restriction of the compute power or the network available that way. So the whole dynamics, I think, of around managing security is kind of under transformation. It really has to be handled. You need to have a different approach to manage and do these various measures for the security than what we have been doing conventionally. And COVID, while has really brought the power of digital to the forefront of many beyond VIT professionals who always knew, but it has really been witnessed by people across all demography, people in villages, young children to senior citizens. Everybody has touched base with digital for their needs for this thing. But at the same time, if you see for the organizations, you and us who are managing these infrastructure, this has really posed a lot of challenges, because earlier we had certain definition of organization network and you were to secure those things. But with this COVID allowing people to work from home, then using wide variety of devices, their mobile phones, their laptops, because everything happened in such a sudden manner that lot of, so to say, our traditional means of doing verifications also had to be shortened to cater to the demand of the service at that time. So put together, it has really made systems more prone to cyber attacks in all those things, because now you have no boundary, you have mobile devices, you have things, your networks are beyond your organizational network. People are using wide variety of public networks and so on and so forth. So therefore, I think our approach towards managing security has to really be transformed from that. What should I say? The current approach we have is almost rendering to be ineffective in whole this thing. So while, as you were telling, I completely agree. This concept of sharing the cyber intelligence or threat intelligence is very, very important, because so much is happening across the world. Instead of everybody having their own cycle of learning, going through the attack and then taking measures, if you could share this intelligence with each other, we'll be more empowered, we'll be more informed, and maybe we can do more of a proactive action onto it. And all this again has to happen electronically. All exchanges to systems have to happen. So one thing, we need to bring a lot of automation in our whole security management. The two reasons for that: one is the scale of infrastructure with this cloud, the number. You remember earlier, if there is a system, 5 servers, 10 systems, 15 servers, end of it. Today, you have an application like we have Arogya Setu, applications which will have 500 containers, 500 machines for that matter. All that needs to be protected at the same time. All that need to be managed in terms of supposing some patch has to put in, some security thing has to be done. So whole thing has to happen in an automated process. You need to really be very proactive in defending your system, because now, even if you know there is an attack, the time you will have to defend your system or make your system will not be perhaps. So while we have all these AI, I think we should use this AI, ML, and more importantly, data which is being generated through the various logs which are getting generated into the system, into the whole network and infrastructure. This all has to be used in an intelligent manner to be taking proactive actions to this thing, and to be enabling our systems to be defending themselves, or to be kind of shutting down in case they see that there is a kind of attack coming, instead of waiting and human intervention to happening. So the whole approach, which I think a lot of work has been done by many software companies, and are bringing more of a behavior oriented, or more of a data kind of data analytics, and then obviously threat intelligence, putting these things together. A lot of tooling has to be done to make, and each organization will have its own profile, so that you can quickly, you can take proactive measures so that you can prevent. And if you have got detected something, how do you prevent it from damage? And in case the attack is there, how do you reduce that complete impact of damage? And I think data analytics, AI, ML are going to play a very, very important role, coupled with a lot of automation needs to be there. So in nutshell, what I like to basically say first, and another thing which I've been always saying, that security need not be seen from a a very microscopic view. You need to have a very, very comprehensive approach to security, because even a single piece in this puzzle, if it's weak, your whole system becomes vulnerable. So you have to secure every layer, right from your infrastructure, cloud, data center, to your application, which all of us always focus, to your data. Now, with, as you rightly said, with this PDP coming up, and even if PDP is not there, see, so much of a sensitive data of citizens' health, personal profile is all coming into our digital system. So protecting that becomes our responsibility. Act makes it more deterrent, but otherwise also, I think, as a responsible individual professionals, we should really address onto this. So you have to secure system it all these layers and take corrective appropriate measures and all these places. And finally, your endpoint security is also as important as your as the other things, and therefore making sure that how do you design your systems, or how do you define various permissions and privileges, so that your system, even if from the vulnerability at the endpoint, system is not impacted and the users are not impacted. That is very important, because please remember, now we have the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. We are trying to bring more and more them in the fold. They are not that educated, they do not have that kind of a IT savviness. Their probability of being aware of these phishing attacks and malware is just not is to be very, very low. So I think it becomes as we are finding it a business opportunity, it is also pertinent for us to make sure that how do we ensure that these people on the end also are kind of made aware, so that they behave in a more responsible and secure manner. So all that outreach and communication strategy in multilingual form also should be an important dimension of our strategy when we are trying to go, because only if they are secure, if they have a trust in the system, then only all of us as a business or as IT professional can grow. So that aspect also has to be paid to this thing. And lastly, I think security is the whole, this cyber security particularly domain is moving at such a fast pace, and with cloud computing, quantum computing, you will see more of the speed further and on these things, while our digitalization efforts will also move at the same speed. We really need to constantly skill and upskill our professionals. We really need to have to pay focus that every individual who's involved in security, they're very busy, they're working 24/7, but some kind of a strategy has to be there to constantly skilling and upskilling these professionals to be ready to take this challenge and defend any kind of attack which comes to our system, and keep our citizens safe towards the end. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Neeta. I mean, as always, it's my privilege to summarize by virtue of people to note it later on. Forgive me if I miss any point. I would rather start by saying the skilling, where the virtual platform today has given an opportunity to connect to more experts of security worldwide, which could not be there in a room. That's one way of seeing the learning. And then somebody in the village in India, very advanced villages, if I can say so, being a citizen of India. The mobile, which you said is my office, my home altogether. The only concern which we need to also carry is that mobile is also professionally used. So how do we still combine together the digitalization, the risk assessment you brought? Thank you, Dr. Neeta, for bringing the endpoint security while we all are remotely working. FireEye team mentioned we as Microsoft, owner of endpoint security on Windows. We always say if you're on Windows 7 for several years, 90% of the risk is already open to it. Now, FireEye team also mentioned about risk mitigation, which is happening because we will see a lot of insider threats, right? So now people are getting into zero trust journey. I am thankful you brought a point which I would like to share as trust, which we call like digital trust altogether. So this is the need to be culturally enabled to be security, and security is everyone's responsibility rather than just the IT for the government and others to say so. Thank you, Dr. Neeta Verma, for giving us that opportunity to share the perspective across skilling, across technology. And I'm so privileged that while we are the top 3 smart devices, users in the world, I'm sure the IoT devices, AI is not another technology. We will have a different world altogether. And now we are seeing the national digital platforms getting integrated thanks to NIC for seeing the Arogya Setu and other things. So good. We have heard from FireEye there might be vulnerabilities. We all declare cyber criminals lure more, as Dr. Neeta Verma ma'am said. But we also need to see, can we balance adopting the new technologies as well as into that. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. It's a privilege talking to you again virtually, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. With that great learning from Dr. Neeta Verma ma'am, where we had seen all the aspect of digitalization technology. We also have a panel coming up now, which is talking more on, how these threats landscape, to be looked into. How are we seeing from our own, CERT-IN India Ministry of IT, Dr. Shri S. Sarma is with us. Mr. Tathakta Datta, Director NCII PCC, the most critical infrastructure. We will hear his point of view. Shri Dhaval Pandeji, Office of Advisory, Cyber Secretary, DRDO, Ministry of IT. A very warm welcome for the panel. I would request if some of you can, open your videos so that we have more interactive session. I will have few questions. Feel free to add some of the viewpoints here. I will take a minute so that we can just settle down and we'll start. Thank you. I hope I'm audible and visible to you.
Yes. And before we start, there's a small announcement. Dr. Mukesh Chandra and Dr. Triveni Singh will be joining us a little late. They are still within their offices in the meeting. So they will be joining immediately after the meeting is over.
Thank you. Thank you. We have expertise panel, and there's nothing better, which I learned recently from Yihao Lim. Yihao, I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, that's okay. Yihao is okay. Thank you.
Yihao, okay, yes. Okay. Let me correct myself. It's a decade of unlearn and learn. Let's start with that first. Yihao, welcome. I am going to start with you because you left some first half and second half, and this won't be too challenging question, but we being industry partners, seeing how the APT 36 and other trends moving on. From the defender's perspective, what is the biggest challenge in dealing with threat actors? How do you see that? And why are the attackers still rampant after so much money is being invested or protected? We all say, like Government of India, we are investing. Dr. Neeta Verma mentioned we have certain Mr. S.S. Sarma with us, from DRDO. We have other privileged panelists to give those views. But why don't you start bringing that, the private organization looking into it?
Sure. So I think the very root cause of the problem here is actually attribution. The reason why we are not able to get rid of all these problems is because bad guys are still getting away with it, basically because of the complexity of attribution. The fact that we are unable to point a finger and be 100% confident to say that this guy stole that Bitcoin from this specific wallet makes it, makes it encouraging for cyber criminals to come in and participate more. So in FireEye itself, we take attribution very seriously. That's why you see how we are spending years of looking at attack activity and then slowly grouping them into the temp group and eventually into an APT group. It is a very long and arduous process because we are very particular about making it right. Instead of calling it a name and then giving it a certain attribution based on just limited data sets. That is also why FireEye itself is very consistent and very, you might say, conservative about making exclamations or claims towards specific actors, linking it to countries. Yeah, so I think the main problem is attribution, and if we can get attribution right, given that partnership between us and, for example, Microsoft sharing data and sharing visibility, maybe we will be able to fix this problem. And then we will be able to reduce the scope and the escalating fact that this kind of attacks are bringing around to different industries all over the world.
Thank you, Yao. That's a great point to start. And this gives me an opportunity to invite Shri S.S. Sarma. I hope Shri S.S. Sarma ji, you are there.
Yeah, I am here, Deepak. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you as well. You see me a little dark because suddenly I saw a light fluctuation. If you see a
Yeah,
change,
anyway, we have been used to discuss in the dark and dealing with dark spaces.
And
yeah.
that too, that's a different word of dark web. It's not a dark web or dark net.
Dark web, yes.
Thank you, Shri Sarma ji, to be here. And what Yao just mentioned, I would like to take a moment for you to build us seeing the nation state threat as we see in Microsoft report, as well as what Yao mentioned just now. How do you see the cyber resilience building it up in cyberspace when we are seeing work from home? We see a lot of advisory from CERT, thanks to the country where you are sharing those input. But what is that one or two challenges you are seeing, and how do we build that cyber resilience for the country?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It makes me in comfortable position asking Deepak. You have been straight into the point actually. See, we always talk about cyber security, and there are alerts, advisories, various measures, etc., and all those things are there. And organizations gets a little bit confused in terms of cyber security and cyber resilience. When it comes to what is resilience, how it is different from cyber security. Let me give my thought actually from CERT-IN's experience, because we are more into the cyber resilience rather than cyber security actually, because our primary task is reacting to cyber security incidents. So the resilience here, what we say is, it's not that you may be having various kinds of security controls, etc., perimeter security, user awareness, everything is there. But what if something goes bad actually? If some attack happens, how do you react to those attacks? And security controls will definitely mitigate those attacks if they are in place and if you are prepared to security attacks. But in spite of security attacks, can you continue your business in a secure manner? Can you assure your services are delivered in a timely manner? So resilience, in our opinion, means minimizing the impact of the attack. How quickly you will recover from the attack, and how do you continue your businesses in spite of cybersecurity attacks, and whom you will look for. Just like we say, in case of so main thing comes from a collaborative point of view. Main thing comes in an individual space also. We go to certain entities and certain people when we are in a problem. It may be family, it may be friends, it may be government, it may be police. Different problems, different people we go to. So entire thing boils down to, from an organization perspective, do you have a plan? Have you perceived an attack? Do you have a plan? That plan we call that is an incident response plan. So you have to sort of have an eye on events. If you analyze your events, as Neeta Madam was also saying, if you analyze events properly through whatever mechanisms are there and whatever intelligence you have and your own analyst capacity is there, with the people, process and technology, if you can continuously analyze events, you can detect incidents. If you properly detect incidents, you will avoid crisis. So if you don't analyze events, you will have more incidents. And if you don't detect incidents and mitigate them in a proper manner, you will go to the crisis mode. When a crisis comes, then more efforts will be required and your resilience plan has to be invoked. So it's all about avoid crisis. To avoid crisis, we have within the government organizations, most of the government organizations are familiar. We have a cyber crisis management plan. What are the attacks you can perceive, what to do in case of attack happens, and how do you prepare? Everything boils down to your preparedness. The more you are prepared for the cyber attacks and you perceive threats, as you was mentioning, you have, I don't know how to pronounce that, you have mentioning, if you know your enemy, and if you know the tactics, tools, and procedures of the enemy, you can build defenses on that. If you don't know the enemy and you are not aware of his modalities, then your preparedness is in a question mark, and your resilience plan has to be questioned. That's what my view. Yeah.
Wow. There cannot be better answer of coming from CERT, on the resilience. So thank you for bringing that, more on the resilience. It is a process of incident response. If I can even summarize seeing that point, Dr. Neeta Verma also mentioned the word which we should highlight more as minimizing the attack surface area. and we are doing it based on what Shri Sarma ji mentioned right now. The security response team or incident management should have a process of analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. And like we are seeing pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, similarly, we see pre-incident, during incident, post-incident. And this is all a mechanism what Sharma sir has brought up. Thank you. This gives me an opportunity to touch upon from sir to the critical infrastructure of any country. Fortunately, we have Tatagda Datta with us. I hope you can hear me. Mr. Tatagda?
Yes, you are audible. Yes, you are
Thank
audible.
you. Thank you. We had a good chat earlier in last 1 or 2 days to just learn, while seeing the critical infrastructure of any country is so important. Seeing something like in a second, I saw a dark room because the light is not there, right? Seeing that dark light gives a worry of whether it is dark net or a dark light or impact. The nation state impact comes in. Keeping that in mind, I have a very simple question: that how do you see the way we see CERT-IN having the advisory and then getting us, strategic arrangements of incident response is very important. For you, nation state is on the national critical infrastructure. What is that important analysis you have to, give as a message and a very simple messaging that how we can build more of cyberspace, how we can get into more tools, technologies which can be implemented rather than being on the theoretical part. While we are seeing, even the critical infrastructure have to expand. So it is not only on premises, it is everywhere. So how do we build and balance technology and security together?
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, all co-panelists, and thank you, ASSOCHAM and FireEye, for inviting NCIPC in this fantastic panel where we can actually share our views. And very pertinent question, Deepak. As we are discussing on the other day, and as Dr. Neeta Verma has mentioned, that we are in a journey of digital transformation. And in the journey of digital transformation, it is more about talent than technology with Indian context, right? And when we talk about talent, it is related to human resource. So now, if we look at the cyber security or information security, whatever we are comfortable with while discussing this, is not a responsibility of one particular organization or a group of entities. It is an ecosystem. And in any ecosystem, everybody has their respective contributions and responsibilities. Okay, right? Mr. Sharma pointed out certain areas where CERT-IN is doing. Now, if we actually refer ITR 2008 amendment, it talks about system. So section 70 talks about we need to identify and protect the critical systems critical to the national safety, security, public health, and economy. Any impact on these 4 areas create an havoc in the country, can bring adverse impact on our economy, public health, and what we are discussing since the morning. Now, CERT-IN playing a very critical role when any entity, any organization is under attack, how to respond, how to minimize the impact, and how to restore the normal. And the role of NCIPC is more of proactive, helping critical infrastructures to do a proper risk assessment, proactively take necessary actions to enhance the resilience so that you do not end up in situation where there is a crisis. So what we are doing, we are helping all critical sector organizations to do a thorough risk assessment in their respective context. And while doing that, you need to consider all the interested parties that includes law enforcement agencies, the mandates that has come from the regulators, the consumers. If you look at Dr. Verma was saying that the number of mobile users has increased drastically. Right? Who all the users? Now, users are not actually from the tech background. They are not from core of this industry. When normal citizens are using that, they are either in the side of service consumer or a contributor to the service providing entity. The skilling and upskilling of those resources and letting them aware anything happens to the national critical infrastructure, how their personal interest will also be impacted. Then they're more responsible towards handling the upcoming technologies and all this stuff. Because technology, people, process, and technology, these three terminologies we have been using for last 1 decade. From the technology and process perspective, there are experts who are actually taking care of. And the people is the weakest link. And now if we actually things aware, or can increase the visibility of what is going on and what are the that may cause harm to the national critical infrastructure, I think that may help. And recently, considering the COVID and all this stuff, apart from transport, power and energy, banking, insurance, the healthcare sector is also taken under the purview of the national critical infrastructure. NCIPC is always playing a role of sharing threat intel to all across all the domains and industries, so that all entities can work together and create a resilient. So that's the core of this thing. I think that NCIPC is doing, really helping the organization to do a proper risk assessment. What are the areas where the emerging technologies can bring adverse impact? What are the good practices being adopted by other organizations? Can bring them in their understanding. I think as an ecosystem, India can evolve as a very cyber environment.
Thank you. I mean, this is great. The journey which you shared on going into digital transformation, at the same time the skilling, and now when data is everywhere, it's not residing at one place, including critical infrastructure, which needs to expand. That's how we can be more agile. It is very, very important to have that balanced thing. Thank you, Mr. Tatakta, for bringing that point of view. With respect to time, we'll see if we have another round of questions coming back to you. I have an opportunity to be with Shri Dhaval Pandeji. I can see on screen, Office of DRDO, and representing us from a department which can explain a lot more, not only about skilling, not only about technology, but I would like to pose a question more to do with diversity and inclusion, the way we are seeing, because things have been changing as a priority workplace, as well as if you can bring some point of view that it not only COVID, but in future, how a government or enterprise or even the SMEs have to have a responsible usage of technologies, while we are embracing digitization a lot more. This will help build the things. Dhavalji, if you want to take that up. Sir, sorry, you have to unmute.
Thank you for bringing us in this panel, first of all, and I pay my sincere regards to all the panelists around there. Two things primarily what we see in this COVID situation, and how we dealt with certain things, how we had to enable our technologies which were considered never to go home. In an organization where we live, where we do work, it's like we have an entirely separate network on which we work, and nothing has to come on internet. But yes, in such tough times when people can't travel, like your production can't stop, your working can't stop. So somewhere around you have to create a balance. What we learned is cybersecurity, what we have to put cybersecurity in the planning phase of itself. What we have not been doing is we have been patching up. What we have been doing is we have been hardening, but we have not been planning it. When we are, for example, when we are deploying a data center, when we are putting some servers or something, we buy it. And we said that after it, we will buy the security solutions, which will be part of it. After that, we will see, okay, what ports have to be opened. When the application is deployed, we will see how the hardening is to be done. We will do a VAPT and we will do. But yes, we know the certain parts of code. We know certain part of things. We know what we are planning to install on those systems. We know what we are planning to deploy. Then why don't we take a leap forward and bring that cyber security, that cyber security paradigm at the start of the planning phase? Because you have now with the inclusion of endpoints, how we say endpoints have diversified. Earlier, what was happening, if I was talking about an organization, I had similar kind of endpoints. Now my endpoints have also become mobile. Even in government, we have a lot number of IoT devices, right? Many when in terms of like we say in terms of even SCADA activities, even in terms of a camera or something. When we see those devices, right, what part we just say that, okay, these are for enablement, these things can be put in the network and they are just for seeing the security aspects of it. But if we closely look into these things, when we are seeing those devices, for example, I consider an Android phone, which is like an IP phone. When you see the OS versions of them, they are still running on Android 5 or Android 6 in most of the organization, if they have one. Right now, now if we consider that factor, how easy, if they are in the public domain, how easy it is to channelize an attack onto them and get into the network. This is how things are happening. The thing is, because we have not seen to them in a way that they are also part of the network, they are like they are always considered as an additional thing into the network. But now when we have to enable work from home, when we have to enable things, when people, the networks are not so closed, we will have to look at every device which is in our network, because a single loophole can destroy everything that's inside, right? We'll also need to work out on ways that how we define confidentiality of things, how we do those classifications, because when we are seeing incidences or something, now people have to work. There will be certain part of the job, there will be certain part of the task that need to be done, right? So those things need to be taken care of. So that's how we see that overall, this is the way looking forward, that in design phase only of the systems, we have to enable cybersecurity.
Great point. I mean, great point. We all have to agree the way you said. You know, it is something like let's fix the basics of security first. You know, we may be in a journey of digitization. We may be the top 3 smart devices users in the world. We are in advanced stages of building use cases for agriculture in AI, or AI in healthcare and other things. But there is also a few point of view which resonates very well. It said, you know, it's a time for security to be built in. It cannot be bolt on. You may add technology, tools, product, but it has to be built in. I'm sure we are using that words, but with time it will come up like privacy by design. Microsoft itself, when you have to create a product from day one, it has to be privacy by design. It has to be inbuilt into that. And we need to follow some, minimum security baseline and add the practices. Thank you, Mr. Dhawan, for bringing that up. I hope I'm audible. I see a disturbance. I hope I'm audible.
You're audible.
Okay, great. I mean, this gives an opportunity. We are left with 10 minutes. One more point of view, which I would like to see. A lot of points have come up together while putting a summary of 3 lines, and then I would like Yihao again to come back on giving some point of view. You know, what we have learned during this, and you all can help us bring the way we use the term zero trust, which is also one of the largest cybersecurity investment, but more importantly, remote workforce, work from home, walls and moats of securing at your premises has gone away. Dr. Neeta Verma mentioned a word, automated. It's not just analytics and automation, but it is helping, making life easy, and unfortunately making life sometimes miserable because of nation state actors, threat actors, and APT 36 and others, and being in the regions as well. Now, building the built-in security, cyber resilience as a fundamental operation, bringing earlier it came, I think, from Yihao itself, that it has to be what we call in Microsoft like alert fatigue. You cannot have your security operations center people 24/7 on the screen time and utilizing each and every log. Right? Like Mr. Dhawan said, that these are the basic practices. How do we automate, utilize it, and minimize that by using the best practices and continuous security assessment? You cannot have security just for some time, or because now we have landed into just in time. Yeah, I would like you to come back and share, looking ahead with this type of scenarios, what I try to summarize in some point of view. What is it you need to see for 2021 in terms of security threats and scenario? What type of threats we are going to be? What is it we need to be aware of, coming from FireEye, Mandiant, and looking at these services and type of attacks? Yeah, over to you.
Thanks for the question. So I would think that in terms of types of threats, we shouldn't be too novel, or we will expect to see the similar types of threats. But what I think specifically will continue to persist will be ransomware. Just simply because ransomware itself is still a growing community. Multiple places in dark web we have seen new variants of ransomware popping up. There are new names, there are new groups calling themselves new names, because this has proven to be very profitable over the last 12 to 18 months. There are billions of dollars that are paid out in ransom. So as this continues to pay money, more cyber criminals will be on board and more victims will be targeted. That's the number one. I think number two would be the whole idea about supply chain compromise. The recent SolarWinds incident. There will also be an ongoing conversation right now, because the fact that this specific incident has brought so much attention to the world. Different types of IT providers now will also be asking themselves the same question. Are we compromised, and will it affect our clients? And people will look into the patches with more stringent measures. And there'll be a conversation where people have to think about how do we make sure that this doesn't happen to us. So I would think that these will be the two big themes that will be happening going forward to 2021.
Thank you. That's true. We have our own intelligence report. You have shared the threat intelligence, and to be very honest, we take any of the analytical reports. Healthcare, education, banking, financials have been the largest impact. But having said that, personally observed even the consumers using collaboration platforms, students being confronted within their classrooms on virtual things, all have been disrupted. So needless to say, the attack and impact is for each and every one. Very rightly Apted pointed out, ransomware is because you have large enterprise to pay for. Consumer is where you lose your brand entity, if I can say so. It can be individual, it can be a musician, it can be somewhere their data lying, and I would not like my photos to be circulated. Everything from a brand reputation to threat intel to having a defense and intelligence information leaking, which you shared earlier. Everything goes very, very, very critical. Thank you for sharing that. I am privileged also, fortunately, to join, on this dais, virtual dais, Professor Triveni Singh ji, SP Cybercrime UP Police. Sir, I hope I'm audible to you and visible. I hope you're not on mute, Professor Triveni Singh ji.
Professor Singh, you're on mute, please.
Yeah. Now, am I audible?
Thank you, sir. Yes, perfectly. You're
Yes.
audible. Yeah, you're perfectly audible. While you are here and we have built up, if at all you got a chance earlier to listen to the distinguished panelist from CERT-IN, where we talked about incident response and how it is important to build that up. Now we have FireEye team who have built upon the type of threats we are seeing. I'm fortunate that I'm working with multiple commissionerate and seeing the cyber policing, if I can say so, and then seeing the critical systems. I would say, you are helping the nation while bringing the user citizens to be secure and safe. With that, would you like to point some of the highlights, how you are seeing, the type of threats, how you are handling the situations in your distinguished capacity, and how it is building it up to be more cyber resilient and secure?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really sorry. I was in a very important meeting that was going on. So I'm just free and joining. So first, I would like to highlight some statistics regarding cybercrime. In fact, CCTNS, that is Crime and Criminal Networking System, that came into existence in 2013. And since then, we have got 36,000 cybercrime cases registered in UP alone. But MHA started a website, cybercrime.gov.in, in last September. So in just 15 months, we have got more than 34,000 cases related with UP only. So now you can imagine the magnitude of the cyber crime happening. And personally, as a police officer, I think that each and every crime is having some cyber angle, where data forensic is needed, where technology is involved, all that. Earlier, we used to get a very simple crime related with email hacking or somebody hacking your Facebook social media account, Facebook, and they were defrauding through wallet and taking your OTP and all that. But now, recently, in last 1-2 years, we are getting that cyber criminals, they are getting more and more smart. And now we are getting cases related with cryptocurrency fraud and ransomware attack and business email compromise, man in the middle attack, then attack over the data center, all that, and debit card, credit card cloning cases. And we are and some more serious concern is now that each and every data related with sensitive organizations like banks and insurance and other corporate sector, that's freely available on the dark web. You go on the dark web, you can find out any data. Of course, it's available on premium. You can pay the price. You can get data related with any corporate, banking industry. All data is there. So it's really a matter of concern for us. Recently, we got a few cases related with ransomware attack. The most worrying part is that not in the police department, not in any law enforcement agency. I'm talking about entire infosec domain. I'm talking about all the expertise we have we have even in corporate sector. They are not able to crack any ransomware attack. They cannot decipher. They cannot they cannot manage to decrypt the file which has already been encrypted. And in case they have paid money through Bitcoin, we are not in a position to identify the criminals who are actually getting benefited. So the problem in ransomware attack, number one, we cannot decipher, we cannot decrypt the files. There is no technical solution as of now. As I am talking to all the experts in India, they are very helpless, like law enforcement agency in case of cybercrime attack. And once they have paid the money through Bitcoin, we cannot identify who are the beneficiary. And the one thing more I would like to highlight, the technology and tools which are in hands of cyber criminals, that is really that's really beyond the capacity of law enforcement agency to backtrack. Because this is the age of spoofing. We can spoof any number. We can spoof SMS number. We can spoof IP. We are spoofing MAC ID. So there are lots of tool and technology through which we can hide our identity, and the criminal are using it. And for law enforcement agency, the problem is that of backtracking, because there are so many entities involved. Suppose I have got my IP address, then that IP address may be some proxy somewhere being originated in some other country, and then they are attacking their access. They are using IP address of some other country, and it's a proxy bouncing, and then ultimately they are attacking here in India. The fact is that the criminal is sitting here just beside my room. He is sitting somewhere in his car, and he is making this attack by using proxy bouncing and all that technology. It's very tough for law enforcement agency to track all that. My submission, I always suggest that now each and every cyber crime is international in nature. It's global in nature. There are so many entities, there are so many nodal points, there are so many nodes involved, that unless and until there is some international collaboration, for the sake of sharing the information in real time, we have to have some mechanism to share all these metadata, even data in real time. Only then we can be successful to tackle all these complicated cybercrime, which are now we are facing, and not only general public, even corporate sector are under attack. Recently, you have seen there have been so many data breaches cases related with medical industry, a pharmaceutical company like Dr. Path Lab, Dr. Reddy, and there was recently there was an attack on Haldiram. So and more often we see in the newspapers, the newspapers reports are flooded with data breaches cases. We are taking very lightly all these cases. In all the cases, I haven't seen that any corporate sector or any law enforcement agency has backtracked the criminal who are behind the data breach. And in most of the cases, personally, I feel that insider are involved. Even corporate are not finding out those insiders who are involved into data breaches. We talk a lot about cybersecurity. We talk a lot about there are tools and technology available for preventing or for detecting the cybersecurity incident. The fact is that on the ground, nothing is happening. And in most of the cases, you always talk to CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team, and AICP, which is the nodal agency for critical information infrastructure. Nobody is reporting even. So there is a breach. As far as breach notification state is concerned, corporate are not coming forward to report their incident to CERT or other legal authority, because they always fear that it will be a media issue and then our brand will be affected. How long each corporate will go on doing it, hiding their breaches and crime, till we are not disclosing our data breaches or for that matter any kind of cybercrime attack over the corporates, it's not coming into the public domain, it's not going to the law enforcement agency, we cannot be successful in controlling the cyber criminals. Thank you.
Wow, what a learning. And I'm privileged to be part of being UP Police. And while we were seeing some of the instances, sir, you rightly mentioned, for the audience and for all the panelists, we are seeing challenges as well. You have brought challenges, which is really great. So tools, technologies like AI and others are more advancedly used by cyber criminals as well. Highly unfortunate that, like a physical crime, a chain snatching, which may happen, you may have a physical evidence to reach there. Now, technology is helping how quickly you can reach him, by intelligently utilizing it. But at the same time, those technologies are also making, like, we all are, learning and support together with the policing, cyber policing, and we found out it has to be more intelligent. Needless to say, there is a requirement of minimum baseline security. The command and control centers, if it can be less of humans doing that, security, the experts can do that and identify that point of view. This is great talk, Professor Triveni, for building that up, and especially sharing the real concern, the challenges, that even the information of security being breached or data breaches, which are really high, including Haldiram and others, which has happened recently. Unfortunate, but I hope that data protection bill, the national cyber strategy, things which are coming up, bringing our nation high, you may have to report to the to get data breaches and all. And I would like to again invite Shri Sarma ji. We have only 8-10 minutes, maybe a minute for each one of us, starting with Shri Sarma ji, to give that add-on. Professor Triveni has built up nicely that how it can be. What is it coming up? What is your top of the mind to conclude this topic? What is most important you see from certain point of view? And I'll follow up with NCIPC, Tataka ji and others as well. Sarma ji, you are there?
In the interest of time, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can hear you, sir.
Yeah. So
we just need a minute from each one of you. Yeah,
I'll give. But I think Dr. Muktesh Chandra is also joined. You can take his view also. I think I've seen somewhere that Muktesh ji has joined. Just see that.
See, Muktesh ji, you are there?
I can't see him on screen right now.
Let me once again say, Dr. Muktesh Chandra, you are there?
So maybe he joined for a couple of minutes. He may be struggling to join. So no problem. So I will give my views. The point mentioned by Trivedi sir is absolutely correct. See, the thing in ransomware is decryption of ransomware will be always a challenge. But one thing, the organizations actually invoking their response plans. If they have backup, they are restoring from the backup and forgetting about the attack. They are not going to root cause of the attack. So they will be always prone if they don't learn from the incident and conduct root cause incidents. As such, I will completely agree with Professor Trivedi that they should report to us and they should give us the indicators what happened. If they don't know what happened, then we are here to analyze to know what happened. That is number one. Number two, other point, very important and pertinent point here is technically it is very difficult to nab the attacker when multiple hops and proxies and VPNs are used across the globe. But there can be a success if, as Professor Trivedi mentioned, in as swift manner as possible, if the logs and information can be shared between the different countries. So internationally, the service providers, we have to sort of evolve to global norms, and some kind of agreements between the countries is always there, but it is taking lengthy time. But in case of ransomware attacks and criminal gangs, the TTPs and the IOCs and the modality used, specific VPNs that are being used from a, let us say, specific region, those kind of trends can be shared along with the logs. And as Professor Trivedi mentioned, this what our practical analysis also indicates, that attacker may be lying in our country itself. If the information is shared in a swift manner and every service provider in different hubs cooperate, definitely some headway can be made. That is number two. Number three is, I am a little bit uncomfortable with the word data breach. In most of the cases, what we have seen is it is not data breach, it is data leak. Simply the organization is misconfiguring the cloud-based servers. Let me tell you very honestly, it is not a big, any hacker is hacking into your system and breaching the data. It is simply a misconfiguration. It's a human mistake that is happening, or a lack of awareness about the configurations. The cloud service providers here have a role to play. They have to enlighten their customers regarding this. When we know that some server is leaking data, we can only reach to cloud service provider, not the end user. We don't know whom that IP belongs. Based on data analysis, we suspect, we speculate that this data maybe belong to this company. So we reach to cloud service provider with the request that reach out to your customer and tell them that they are leaking data. And leaking the data of customers, the personal data of customers, is a punishable offense, and there are liabilities in that. And in the not only going to the data protection bill, in the current IT Act also it's a punishable offense under 43A. Anybody can sue the company that you are leaking my data like that. So organizations need to be aware of this. And it is also mandatory to report incident to CERT-IN. There is no choice. Under Section 70B, it is mandatory. We have given advertisements in the newspapers. Still, people do report. It's not that they are not reporting, but they are taking long time to report. So these incidents of ransomware and these kind of things need to be reported. We have to evolve a matrix of timelines. Like as a CERT-IN, we say that if you report incident to me, my first response will be within 4 hours. This is the timeline we assure in the citizen charter, and we follow also. Likewise, we expect from the organizations that you report as soon as possible. RBI is mandated for the financial institutions to report incident within 6 hours of occurrence to RBI and CERT-IN. So these things, organizations are responsible for this. They need to know this, and they have to put mechanisms. Quickly wrapping, I will give you only 5 points. But this is the normal thing what we tell at the end of our presentations. First thing is building human defense. That is important. Your tools and technologies will not help, because that will evolve, and you will keep on adding devices. And as you correctly mentioned, data fatigue will be there. So the more intelligent 1 or 2 people and good people you have for the security operations, it is better. They can understand the current environment, what is going currently in the threat, what is a patch, what is the current exploitation of vulnerability, like SolarWinds or anything that happens, what FireEye advisory says about the indicator of compromise. There should be someone to understand that and implement. Consume the threat intel. It's not that material is not there. It's about the consumption of the threat intel and consumption of the security advisories. That's number 1. So for an organization perspective, I will stick to that. Do we know our assets and architecture? This is important. They should know their assets and what is their architecture. What if you are secure, but your third party vendor is insecure? Who is processing a part of your data? If he is having an insecure architecture, you are vulnerable as his security. These things organizations should consider. Number 1, that is. And as Dhawan has correctly mentioned, classification of data and information. If you know your data and the levels of data and security levels of the data, you can build protection mechanisms around data. It's not that you have to protect assets. You have to protect your data. That's why, because of the data lag, awareness about the data or information is very much important. Accordingly, you can build security measures and assign subject labels to that, and define integrity levels and access levels for that, access controls, everything. Third thing is, what kind of visibility we have around the network systems and data. Many organizations don't know where data lies. My organizations say my ransomware is encrypted my server, and what you say, where is the data backup? Backup is also encrypted. Why backup is also encrypted? Why it is not offline? So these questions, where you keep your data, in residence, in transmission, where you are transmitting, are you encrypting or not? All these things will come around according to this. And visibility of events. And as you mentioned, seeing all these events manually and analyzing is impossible, next to impossible in today. Many events are getting generated. You should have some automated mechanism. It's not that always costly solutions need to be deployed for that. Depending upon the sizing of the organizations, there are open source solutions. There are organizations and startups are there. Here, I urge companies like FireEye and Microsoft and industry to encourage startups to build solutions for SMEs. We have to sympathize, empathize, and help the small and medium enterprises. Large-scale enterprises anyway can invest some money in security solutions, but we have to help the small enterprises to build low-cost solutions. We have portal of Cyber Security. You know that we have been collaborating to track infected systems. We are providing free cleanup tools for the citizens. And we have collaborated with industry thanks to Keer and Scan, K7. They are providing tools and technologies for us. Thanks to Microsoft for providing the data of infected systems. So collaboration is working fine. So we have to help citizens in the collaborative manner. And fourth thing, from enterprise perspective and national perspective, what is our threat perception? Or do we know the threats? What are going the threats in the future? What are the attackers, TTPs? Who are our enemies? And what are the models? Who are the adversaries? From every sector, these may change. So we have to be aware of that. Fifth thing is, what is the possible best practices in short term and long term? At organization level and as a collective level. These are the 5 points I want to mention. Thank you.
I mean, this is going to help for long. A minute or 2 minutes more what you explained has created a very healthy point of view, and especially the 5 points you summarized. With due respect of time, Sarmaji, thank you so much for at least enlightening and bringing that point of view. We are fortunate that we are providing threat intelligence. Our partner, even FireEye, the way they do threat intelligence into the system and the type of deep knowledge which they brought on, talk about deepfake. I would pass on quickly before we talk to Dhavalji, and the other panelists for a minute. Yahoo, because this was what Sarmaji had mentioned already. Very quickly, if you can build, not as a question right now, though there are questions, but advanced cyber threat intel sharing with law enforcement agencies and issuing it and seeing the other threat infrastructures and security perspective. Just go for your top of the mind, Yahoo, and a concluding point, for audience and panelists. Everyone has to be with 1 minute now. Yahoo, over to you.
Okay, I will not take 1 minute. I'll just take 30 seconds. I agree with I agree with Mr. Sharma that there has to be a stronger industry and government partnership. And in fact, I've been talking to different governments along in Asia Pacific on like information sharing. When they see something, they try to cross-reference with us. Likewise, we do it with them. So that has already helped to yield some sort of success. While we are unable to, formally cause like an indictment or like uniquely identify an organization for crime, but we are able to at least help customers mitigate their attacks. When we do threat hunting, for example, when they're looking for other artifacts by the same actor, we're able to point them correctly in the correct folders or registry keys that the actor might use, to help them to be more efficient in sweeping and taking out the threat actor in their environment itself. Because one problem many people have is they don't know who is the actor behind them. When they find, for example, this Mimikatz file or this Cobalt Strike file, because it is a commodity file that is being widely used, we don't know who is behind this. And having said that, they don't know what are the behavior or habits that this actor group have. And that makes it difficult for them to really get rid of the actor from their environment as a whole. Right? It's been 1 minute? It's been 1 minute, right?
Absolutely on time, and
Okay.
this was important to hear that point of view while we built up with Mr. Dhawanji and then Mr. Tathakta, and hearing last from Professor Triveni ji if he's still around. I would just add what you said to make that very quickly on a concluding point is cyber attribution you mentioned earlier. Looking into incident risk management, incident response management. Now we are also seeing about business continuity planning. Your data is on the cloud, but it is secure. But how responsible we have to be to inform if there is anything, and there's a difference between data being an incident or data leakage versus looking into just data breaches. But yes, we are not able to give the nuts and bolts of the criminals, that who is the real criminal. Mr. Dhawan, if I can ask you, just top of the mind, how do you see the way the conversation is, rather than putting a direct question to you? What is most important and priority right now, which to look into to elevate with so much of security and threat intel being shared? Still, we are not able to put the nuts and bolts together.
The problem is at the basic level, there is still a lack of cyber awareness among the users. So the diaspora of users, the way digitization has happened and things have come into place, people don't understand the risk. That's the very basic thing. In every cyber incident that we have gone through, we have seen that people said, we just clicked it. We have just sent that mail. We have just done that. Even the people who are there for enablement, the admins and everything, they don't understand the risk involved with not patching the system, not updating the systems. I can even see systems still getting infected by something as old as eternal blue vulnerabilities and people getting hacked out of them. And you at Microsoft might be knowing that with that stuff, you will still be getting things. So the thing is, those things are known. Those patches are known for years. Those have been, and people know that how much data has been lost, but still it's like it's unawareness. It's like people don't mean to do that thing. I don't know. But the thing is, till the time we do our basics right on certain things, right? Whatever things we do, because we don't require an organization to fail. We just require one individual to fail in an organization to bring the entire organization or the entire network down. So the thing is, it has to be a cohesive effort. We have to do those basic trainings of people. We need to tell them basics, because an admin can't do everything. As been pointed out by multiple speakers, and even Neeta ma'am said about it, it's not the duty only of the IT team of a institute to take care of things, right? It's the duty of everyone around there. So everyone has to participate. Till the time people don't participate, whatever defenses we build, however costly devices we put on our parameters, whatever endpoint detection and response systems we put in, how much IT audits we do it, till the time each and every user understands the basics that what he shouldn't do, we don't get it right, we will not be able to save organizations.
Excellent. Skilling do's and don'ts for the users, knowing the technology. That's why we say you should be focusing on your organization, your job, your government, enterprise, startup, rather than becoming an expert to solve spam problem. Let the security guys do it, but you have to be a learner, and because you're also utilizing the technologies. Very quickly, for 30 seconds to a minute, I would move to Mr. Tathagda. Just an open question. What is the top of the mind for you when you see from a critical infrastructure and hearing the earlier panelists? What is it you want to share, as a concluding remark? Mr. Tathagda, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
I can see you now. I can hear you. Yes, very good. Yep.
So what I could make out from all distinguished speakers, that if more and more threats and attacks are being reported, then it would be easier for the now security responsible guys to take necessary actions. Now there could be two driving forces. One is penalty and one is reward. At NCIPC, we run a program called RVDP, where we encourage the individual researchers to report to all incident that has happened, and they could find out the vulnerabilities, and they get rewarded, they get recognized through NCIPC, their name get published in the newsletter. So this is actually helping more and more people to come up with the vulnerabilities that they are identifying. And as everybody has said, the security has to be there in the design part. Security control cannot be retrofitted. So now we are in a journey, and we have collectively we have to make the target difficult so that we can actually anticipate what is going to happen. And the reporting of vulnerabilities is very critical. I request all of you through this platform that please visit to NCIPC site and please come up and report all the vulnerabilities to all concerned, be it CERT-IN, NCIPC, whosoever, doesn't matter. We all are working as a connected system. We circulate among ourselves and we'll come up with advice. Will definitely help you to build a very strong security cyber platform.
Thank you so much. Very precise, very important. We call only right to information. It is also that information to be shared. We are doing as an organization threat intel. Now it is important, issues to be shared, breaches to be shared as a process, which is very well highlighted. I cannot miss the opportunity from Professor Triveni ji to give one or two top of the mind pointers, or if you want to bring or throw some to all of us, we should look into security, how we bring it together as a concluding point. Sir, you have to unmute.
IT Act came into existence 2001, and the role of adjudicating authority was already there. 20 years past, there is no awareness among the public. There is such authority which can impose penalty over if some service provider is irresponsible and in their due diligence to protect their data and all that. There is no awareness. And I am talking about the adjudicating authority itself. In 90% of the state, adjudicating authority is not functioning at all. It's a matter of awareness. Since we are in e-governance mode, every governance model is based on IT infra. So each and every department we're supposed to have a CISO. I have seen many departments where CISO were appointed and they didn't have any idea about what's the basic mandate and charter of duties of CISO, what in fact cyber information security management is, and you have appointed the CISO. So we have to have a paradigm change in our thought process. Only those who are eligible, those who can understand the technology part, only they should be appointed the CISO. Even at the state level, I am talking about, there is no identification of what are the critical infra. There is no inventory list so that we could hold a meeting of all those and then educate them. My point of view is that this cybersecurity domain must be taken into totality, and each and every stakeholders, they should have always not a yearly, not a 6 monthly, they should always have a monthly meetings, and all stakeholders must be there to deliberate upon the issues which are coming out. That may be related with capacity building, may be related with awareness, may be related with training and all that, latest circulars, guidelines issued by the governments. There is no idea, there is no platform where we can share all this. There are, but there is no awareness, Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I mean, this is the best we can conclude on before I get to a minute of vote of thanks to each one of you. Very quickly to summarize, for the purpose of bringing this virtual discussion on security as an imperative, cybersecurity is the central challenge of the digital age, no doubt about it. And this is immaterial of the public sector or private sector, law enforcement to be part of it. There is an enforcement required. I totally agree, Professor Triveni ji, to say that there are procedures, but you may not have awareness. And I would rather take one more step with awareness, like you have to do third, then you go to fourth standard, fourth to fifth standard, and you keep moving on. There is no ladder in security because it is plethora of things to learn. What is that ladder? We are fortunate as Microsoft as well to run Cyber Surakshit Bharat, where we call the CISOs, the senior officials, Cyber Shiksha for women empowerment, which is most important, diversity inclusion. And I wish there should be a programs across which we all industry partners, FireEye, everyone is doing all together to bring threat intel, bring deep information, talking about deep fakes, and then seeing how these technologies can be eliminated. But most importantly, security is shared responsibility. Security is everyone's responsibility. Again, one more step. Let's not talk only security. It has to be security, compliance, and identity, and make it inbuilt together. With that, if I have missed anyone, my apologies. With due respect of time, we will take questions offline and email the answers if we allow. It's an honor to give a vote of thanks to each one of you. Thank you for being there today on that virtual platform, making it lively, addressing. Thank you, Shri G. Narendra ji, who started with the session that how it is important to be practically ready. Let's not be only theoretical. Dr. Neeta Verma gave so many inputs from skilling, from automation, analytics, how we are moving to digitalization. Sarma ji mentioned about promoting, be automated, utilize technologies, open source. At the same time, 5 easy steps to get into report instances. Have a 4 hours of window where we are responding. Cannot be better than looking into it. Professor Triveni has created a challenging point of view that what is missing, how we have to be more in the execution stage rather than theoretical stage. Not to be worried, but inform, report, take the learnings together. Shri Dhawanji talked about basic security, very, very important. Getting into the security, the basic, a lot given the awareness, not only the word skilling, but it is more like, awareness, which is very, very important. Thank you, Shri Dattaji, bringing the critical infrastructure, again, the awareness part of it, skilling, and at the same time, how we need to maintain the balance with all those security parameters. I cannot miss our keynote speaker. Thank you, FireEye, building that entire strategy. I really got thrilled to see first half of security incident, second half, Jason Atwell, started with geopolitical things, how it has been seen on the global government, US government, other governments, and at the same time, defense and intelligence, how things are very, very important from the Mandiant threat intelligence perspective and FireEye perspective. Thank you, Luke, for mentioning those point of view, bringing that, the plethora of information related to security use cases, how it is important. And Yihao, you have created a, spark by seeing that what we are having, where we need to navigate. There is a cyber attribution issue, but we also need to fix up when we know what the problem is. And that can only come with the real intelligence. What we are seeing it, every system, every machine, every technology is going to be attacked. There is nothing like, any domain, any experts are going to be missing. Each and every individual, consumers, technology companies, by the way, every company is a technology company, healthcare, pharma. All of us have seen some type of attack, some type of incident, or may see, because this is an ongoing thing. I wish I can say this is a 3-hour or 2 hour of movie at the end. There is no the end to these. Unfortunately, there is no the end for us as the mechanism to defense and offense and find the best root cause with what Sharma ji mentioned, to use tools and technologies. Free software tools are there. We still don't use it. Things are available. With that, it's an honor, to represent this session as a co-chairman from ASSOCHAM and representing Microsoft as chief advisor. I would only say that we need to stay safe, stay secure. Can't leave the world without cyber hygiene. Rather maintaining the COVID hygiene, please also maintain the cyber hygiene. Stay safe, stay fit. Thank you everyone for joining in. Varunji, anything else to conclude the ceremony?
The series that we are starting. We are going to have